It's been an eventful week with national and international issues that made the headlines. Some brought cheer, others generated controversies. Welcome to This Week, 60 minutes of analytical review of the big stories, topical issues, and all the controversies that we heard during the week. We bring fresh perspectives. I'm Somna Sambu. In this debut edition, the political crisis rocking Edo State in South Nigeria, with the controversial claim of a change in the leadership of the State House of Assembly, weeks to the governorship election. Then, with unending security challenges, President Muhammad Buhari's call to heads of security agencies to change tactical strategies and plans for a new approach to fighting terrorism. Plus, across Africa, the decision by Ivorian and Guinean presidents to seek a third term separately despite constitutional limits. And in Lebanon, the decision by President Michel Aoun to kick against the international investigation of the massive bomb blasts that rocked the capital Beirut on Tuesday. We begin in Edo State, where the emergence of a parallel House of Assembly has made the political atmosphere very tense. The power tussle has seen a purported impeachment of the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the State House of Assembly by 17 members, 12 of whom were never sworn in. At the moment, the House of Assembly complex has been vandalized by suspected hoodlums. For an in-depth analysis on the headline stories, I'm now being joined by Dr. Okey, Ikechukwu, who is a public communications expert and executive director of Development Specs Academy, and by Mahmud Jega, his Arise News analyst. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Paul Ejime, the international affairs expert. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now we go to the issues at hand. Why is Edo State very important to the two biggest political parties in Nigeria, the PDP and APC?
For several reasons. One of the reasons is that Edo State or indigenes of Edo State have played pivotal roles since the return of democracy. That is the late Anini State, the enforcer. A man who held...
The fixer, as
yes,
he was
fixer,
called.
yes. A man who had a lot of presence, a lot of control, and who held the party and the state. Then, of course, is also the state of Oshomole, who was a very popular labor leader, and who also has ended up being governor for 8 years. So the forces in the state are very strong. Also, that's Oyegun State. And how that state goes today is likely to affect the political fortunes of all the people in the area. So I'm not surprised that the battle is on. The major issue would seem to be the fact that Oshomole fell out with his protege, who is Obaseki. Obaseki is carrying on based on the understanding or assumption that he is now strong enough to drive his own machine and carry his own passengers. Oshomole is trying to prove that that is wrong. The challenge I see is on both sides. In the case of Oshomole, in recent times, his political fortunes have plummeted. He's not doing enough, in my view, to remedy that. And he's taking on a fight within a divided environment where people are ready to do anti-party activities, probably in order to support Obaseki. So it is important. How that fares will determine the rating of Edo State in the current government, the fortunes of people like Oshomole, whether he will permanently go into oblivion, and whether Obaseki is capable of maneuvering and handling himself in such a way that he could be seen as the alternative fixer, if you like. The challenges are real.
Yeah, the challenges are actually real, but some Nigerians have said that the use of crude force and then crude tactics is actually hitting against the democratic credentials of the country. For example, the impeachment, the purported impeachment issue that happened a few days ago, we've had Nigerians saying that it looks like some of the federalists from Abuja are actually trying to tamper with the outcome of the election, even when it has not held in Edo State.
Well, first of all, it's not new. We've had violence since 1999. P2B as governor was impeached in the same kind of circumstance. not enough numbers were there. We've had speakers impeached the way this one is purportedly impeached. We've also seen violence at all levels, during elections, after elections, in the courtrooms, in party meetings, in party primaries. So there's no need. When you say, I remember somebody saying that, oh, you know, the sacred chamber of the House should not be desecrated. And I asked him, please, what's the sacred element in this chamber where people have been fighting on a regular basis? Well,
it's called the hallowed chamber.
Thank you.
And if it's hallowed, then it means it's a sacred place.
On the contrary.
Okay.
It is called hallowed, but the proceedings within it do not tend to hallow it. Now the point
because they have legislative immunity.
Immunity, okay, so that allows them to misbehave with impunity.
No, but whatever they do there is guided by certain privileges.
The point is that being leaders, whatever they do is supposed to define the texture, character, and moral fabric of the state. It's not been very inspiring, that's the point. And the issue you're raising, with which I agree completely, is that with violence and hooliganism dominating the interactions of both sides, it will appear that the lessons of democracy are not being learned. It will also appear that the principal actors, rather than ask themselves whether what they are doing will be good for the youths going forward, they're more focused on acquiring power within the party framework without thinking of the impact, the ripple effect on society, that you're actually mentoring a new crop of possible future leaders who will see violence as a means of leadership change. That's where they're getting it wrong. Okay,
we'll have to take Mahmud Jega here. And I want to ask him specifically on the advisory made by the Attorney General of the Federation to the Inspector General of Police requesting that security cover be provided for these 17 lawmakers who later emerged, and eventually it led to the alleged impeachment of the incumbent speaker as at then. What exactly do you think the AGF was trying to achieve by this advisory, which is now a point of controversy across the country?
He was probably trying to achieve a partisan political purpose on behalf of his political party, the APC, which would be unfortunate because the Attorney General of the Federation is supposed to stand in a neutral manner for law and order despite party membership. But it will not be the first time, because last year, at the peak of the crisis in Zamfara State, the Attorney General did send a similar letter which was trying to do favor to APC as a political party. But coming back to the main crisis in Edo State, you see, this is a situation in which both parties are undemocratic, they are do or die, they are tyrannical and everything, because the tactics that the APC leaders are using now to remove the current speaker of the Edo State Assembly and going forward probably to impeach Governor Obaseki, because that looks like that's their aim. These are terrible methods, but who started it? Governor Obaseki started it. For whatever reason, he orchestrated a situation in which last year the Edo State Assembly was inaugurated with only 10 out of 24 members, using various subterfuge, signed a proclamation that was seen by only some members in the night, and the majority members did not even see it, and they were prevented from being sworn in, and then you got a state high court to say that the proclamation and the inauguration was legal, all kinds of subterfuge. It was totally undemocratic. Now, morally, if you look at it, the other side is even in a better position because they have now got 17 members out of the 24. I'm not justifying their own trampling of the law, but look at all the methods. Like when they now sat, the Edo State government now came and removed the roof of the State Assembly building. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, you have got two sides, both
of come in there. Can these 14 out of these 17 lawmakers actually be said to have been sworn in line with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution, considering that they were not there on the day of the proclamation, and then considering that this legal advisory by the AGF has just been declared by many lawyers as just based on moral grounds and not constitutionalism? Can they be said to be lawmakers before we now look into the legality of the actions that they took by impeaching, allegedly impeaching the speaker?
Well, the Constitution was violated and trampled upon from day one last year, because otherwise, anybody who has got a certificate of return from INEC that he has been elected, duly elected as a member of the State Assembly, he should be properly informed about the proclamation by the governor convening the assembly, and they should all be there at a proceeding presided over by the clerk to choose their leaders. But because the governor didn't have a majority to assure that persons loyal to him were elected as speaker and other assembly members, he orchestrated this situation. I know there are all kinds of court cases and court rulings by a State House of Assembly saying what was done last year, inaugurating 10 out of 24 members of a State Assembly was legal. But then it tends to discredit State High Courts. Many State High Courts cannot be trusted now. They just do the bidding of state governors. Otherwise, if it is statesmanship that we are applying and the law and the Constitution, every one of those 24 elected members should be brought in and they all sit together, and then we know that the assembly has been inaugurated. But otherwise, all this one saying this one is illegal, this one is illegal, all of them are doing illegal, unconstitutional, undemocratic, and terribly anarchistic things, as far as I can see.
If you had listened to what Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State said yesterday, he referred to these 14 lawmakers as absentee lawmakers, which is to say that on the day of inauguration or swearing in, they absconded and refused to present themselves for the proclamation to actually take effect. How would you react to the description of these 14 lawmakers as absentee lawmakers, and even the PDP going ahead to say, why didn't they say anything after 1 year, or even ask the AGF for a legal opinion after 1 year until now?
You see, let us be reasonable. The day the assembly was proclaimed, these 14 that Governor Wike described as absentee lawmakers, they are in the majority. They are in the majority. So politically and morally, there was no reason for them to abscond and not to attend, because they outnumber the 10 who are loyal to Governor Obaseki. So therefore, they could have easily had their way in the election of the speaker and everything. But you know, they said all kinds of things. They were not informed. They didn't know about the proclamation, that it was made in the night, and the governor sat with the 10 loyal members and inaugurated. That's the accusation. I'm not saying this one is right or that one is right. But to describe the majority as absentee, why should they absent themselves when they have the numbers to have their way in the assembly? So it doesn't make sense, the allegation by Governor Wike. It doesn't make sense at all.
Okay, you're watching This Week. Plenty more still to come. Stay with us. We'll have to go on a break now. On Arise News, I'm Somna Sambu. I still have with me here Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, who is a public communications expert and executive director of Development Specs Academy, and Mahmud Jega, who's Arise News analyst. We go straight to the issue of Wike actually saying that these were absentee lawmakers, and how we can actually focus on issues-based campaigns rather than this brickbats based on personalities.
My first question will be, when did Wike discover that they were absentee lawmakers? Second question, what is the duty of a duly elected governor who has responsibility for a state if more than half of the lawmakers are absent? What steps did he take? What issues did he raise within their parties? Did he meet with their constituents to ask them? So the natural, necessary executive exercise of a sense of responsibility and social responsibility to the people had been absent for more than a year. And then all of a sudden, because of elections, you discover they're absent. What penalties were in place? Were they being paid? If they were being paid, were you being responsible as a governor?
Well, their seats were declared vacant.
I agree. Having declared it vacant, does it remove the fact that these constituencies from where they came ought to have representation? Is it proper?
And the interesting thing is that when the seats were declared vacant, INEC was never allowed to
hold
actually
elections.
conduct elections.
Yes.
So those constituencies, will you say that they've actually been disenfranchised
Not only
from
have they-
exercising their rights both as voters and then enjoying the benefits of having
Not
members of the
only
State
are
House
they,
of
in my
Assembly?
view, disenfranchised, the moral authority on the basis of which Obaseki could speak stands diminished. The moral authority on the basis of which also the disenfranchised lawmakers will speak also stands diminished. Because we are not seeing them complaining about their people not having been represented. There has been appropriation within the period under review. There has been lawmaking. What's their contribution to the development of Edo State? These are core issues. So I believe, I may be wrong, that Governor Wike was being too clever by half. Yes, absentee lawmakers, as a fellow governor, if that happened in your state, is that sufficient? They are all playing politics. We know that because of the election, so some of these pronouncements need not be taken seriously. What should be taken seriously is the need for issues-based campaign. Allegations have been leveled against the incumbent governor. I had Oshomole speaking about a presumably commissioned project for which the vice president. If that is true, that's something for Edo people to worry about. They should also look into the tenure of Oshomole himself. Was he an ideal governor? Did he really serve as the people's man? Is he a uniting force in Edo State to do a divisive one? Would you say his impact on youth development is progressive or retrogressive? Is he significantly very different from other politicians, both in Edo and all over Nigeria? If the answer is no, then the profile on the basis of which he would seem to be justifying the elimination of Obaseki falls flat on its face. My take is, tell us what you want to do for the people of Edo State. Tell us what are the issues about development in Edo. Let that be the basis for your engagement for this election.
I just want to draw your attention to what former Senator Shehu Sani wrote on his Twitter handle, saying that Edo State had become more like Syria, where you have different countries actually having, people who are doing legwork from them. What's the role of Abuja in all of these intrigues that we're seeing in Edo State? And do you think President Muhammadu Buhari would have sanctioned the kind of intervention that the AGF Malami did by actually asking that institutions of state should be used to support certain lawmakers for a certain objective?
I do not know about the president because it will appear, at least within the last 5 years, that there are too many things he doesn't know about and which are happening around him in Aso Rock, on matters of national security. So whether he will sanction it or not, I'm not in a position to comment because consistently you hear him express shock about things that have been going on for weeks. You also find certain steps that are taken in his name which were later discovered not to have been what he sanctioned. So I wouldn't know whether the steps and actions ascribed to the AGF are sanctioned by the president. But the worry is that the AGF is seen to be adopting a partisan posture, and which will appear to...
But his office is actually, actually a political office.
Yes, a political office in the name of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's the Attorney General of the Federation, and therefore his loyalties are not supposed to be worn on his skin. Everybody has a position on every issue, including the weather. Even if we're all working here in this Arise, we're all staff. I may like the AC and you don't, but the AC must be on. And I must contain myself because of organizational culture. We use AC here, we dress in suit. I can't come in my traditional wear because I'm a traditional chief. No. Therefore, the Attorney General of the Federation is Attorney General of the Federation in the first instance. And therefore, primary loyalty is to the Nigerian state.
Now, just a very quick one before we end this issue on Edo. How can we prevent violence from erupting in Edo State? Because the rhetoric seems to be increasing harshly, surprisingly, as the days go by.
We cannot prevent violence. The people of Edo State, the major stakeholders who value the lives and future of their people, should sit down and do a cost-benefit analysis.
Thank you so much. Moving the discussion forward now, the security challenges in the country have continued unabated. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed sheer dissatisfaction with the worsening security situation in the country. At the National Security Council meeting, the president ordered an immediate re-engineering of the nation's security apparatus. It comes on the heels of the attack on the convoy of the Borno State Governor, Professor Babagana Zulum. that led to the accusation of sabotage within the military command structure, and the Governors Forum expressing their disappointments with the security situation in the country. With the marching order to the nation's security chiefs that their best effort is not good enough, what then should we expect?
Yes, Mr. President said, you are doing your best as far as I'm concerned, but there's still a lot more to be done. I am more concerned about the promise we made to the larger Nigerian society, and I am ordering an immediate re-engineering of the entire security apparatus. And this is something that I believe will be done in a very short time. But I just want us to keep hope alive. I know how everybody feels. I know how Nigerians feel. Definitely the president is not oblivious of the fact that securing the nation is the primary responsibility of the government, and I believe in his sincerity. But again, since he's not an octopus, since he's not a spirit, if he delegates to people, then the onus is on them to actually fulfill the legitimate expectation of the larger Nigerian society.
You're still watching This Week on Arise, and I would like to go straight to Mahmud Jega, who would actually give us an insight into how we can actually ensure that we support President Muhammadu Buhari for him to become an octopus, because he's not an octopus, so to say. Now, should President Buhari be advising his service chiefs to sit up and re-strategize after recent attacks, including in his home state, or Nigerians are right to have asked for the sack of these service chiefs?
Well, you see, we have had on many occasions that the president gave orders to the service chiefs and other security heads to march and do this and do that. And also we now recently heard about this re-engineering business. We cannot know exactly what the government means by re-engineering until they tell us, which we hope maybe if the media and the National Assembly press, we might find out, even though the NSA said it will happen shortly. But you know, it's one thing to give a man or a woman marching orders. It's another thing to provide the person with everything that he is required to carry out the order. In the 10 years that the Boko Haram insurgency has lasted in this country, plus the many years in which banditry and intercommunal clashes and cattle rustling and all kinds of things have also reigned, and all the killings in the villages and in the towns, many observations have been made in various reports. One about the shortage of personnel in the military. I don't know exactly how many soldiers we have. I think it's about 170 to 200,000, but they are running more than 10 different security operations.
Time. You're watching This Week on Arise News. Plenty more still to come. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week. I'm Somna Sambo. Apologies to our guest earlier that we had to cut him short, and we now continue with that conversation that you were having, and we would want you to focus more on what you think the government is proposing in its new strategy that we are hoping it will release pretty soon in weeks to come.
Okay, you see, strategy and tactics are very important in almost every aspect of life, especially in the military, which is a life and death issue. But there are certain basic things that have to be done, which have been identified over the last weeks and years, which is that we have to increase the number of soldiers under arms in Nigeria. We have to improve their equipment, their weapons, so that they attain superior firepower over the insurgents and the bandits and the other criminals. You have to provide to them the right logistics and the right protection gear and the right welfare facilities and motivation, and also the best tools for the acquisition of intelligence in order to prosecute the war. Now, when all these are in place, because otherwise, if these basic things are not in place, you can do any strategy that you like, but it will be of a doubtful outcome. So that is the reminder. So these things take time. And I don't know what the government is thinking about changing its strategy, but definitely we have to meet the basic requirements for successful military operations before any strategy or tactic could work.
Army was speaking exclusively with Arise News. I'm talking of Senator Ali Ndome, who just returned from his home state during the week, said that despite budgetary provisions for the Nigerian military, it's surprising that the cash releases have always been problems. It has always been the major problem. How do you think that the Nigerian bureaucracy can be hastened up to ensure that these actual budgetary provisions get to the Nigerian military and the right equipment are bought for them so as to reduce the low morale which has seen so many soldiers exiting the military service?
Well, the truth is that budgetary allocations and in particular budgetary releases to almost every ministry and agency of government always fall short, sometimes very, very short. But it is the political leaders that will make things work in the end, because it is a matter of priority. If you say we are at war or we are facing a serious security problem in various parts of the country, and security trumps everything, because if you don't secure lives and property in the country, nothing else matters. You can't have economic reconstruction or rebuild infrastructure or get people back to work or anything if people are afraid to even travel. There is kidnapping, there is shooting, and 2 million people are displaced and can't go back home, and everywhere insecurity pervades the landscape. So that should be the top priority, and that particular aspect, it is up to the political leaders to ensure that all the budgeted monies are released, and not only released, but properly utilized, because there is also the question of corruption in the political leadership, in the bureaucracy, and also in the military hierarchy itself. And all those have to be tackled in order to ensure that the resources that are channeled are properly utilized in order to acquire the right equipment and technology and get over at least with the Boko Haram insurgency within the shortest possible time, and also tackle the kidnapping and the other insecurity situations that we have everywhere.
Make of the warning by the United States African Command, where the U.S. AFRICOM commander warned that Nigeria should join hands along with Mali, Burkina Faso, and other West African countries to prepare ahead of insurgents and terrorists that may infiltrate the country again. That has been dismissed by the Nigerian military. The DHQ said, I mean, it's not a new warning and all of that. Should Nigerians really be afraid that terrorists may actually invade the country again?
Sorry, you are speaking to me?
Yes. That's why I want you to actually address that issue. What do you think is the warning by the U.S. AFRICOM commander? He actually said that Nigeria should work with Mali, Burkina Faso, and other countries to ensure that more terrorists do not infiltrate into these countries within West Africa. But the DHQ, Defense Headquarters, were dismissive of that matter when it was raised at a press briefing, saying that such intelligence information is not new. Should Nigerians be afraid for their security much more following this U.S. warning? That's what I...
You see, the Americans themselves, they are being hypocritical in this matter. I read the statement by General Anderson, the commander of the U.S. Special Forces Africa. He didn't admit the biggest problem, which is that the Americans and their Western allies went and orchestrated wars, in particular in Libya, against the advice of the African Union, which was that they shouldn't interfere in the struggle that was taking place that time between Gaddafi and his opponents. But they did so, they bombed the country, they overthrew the Gaddafi regime, as a result of which the country fell to pieces. There are now several governments in Libya, and all the huge arsenal that Colonel Gaddafi took 40 years to acquire just dissipated, and it is at the root of all the problems that we are having from Mali throughout the Sahel region, in Mali, in Niger Republic, in Nigeria, in Chad and northern Cameroon, and all the way to Somalia. But the American general didn't say anything about that. Instead, he attributed the situation to what he called the African countries' poor response to the coronavirus pandemic. That is not the source of the problem. It is not coronavirus that brought so many deadly weapons throughout the Sahelian region. The virus was this year. This problem has been on, like in Mali. It was back nearly 10 years now. And Boko Haram is also more than 10 years, and the problem in many other parts. So the Americans themselves have been disingenuous with this, their so-called warning to us.
Thank you, Mahmud Jega, Arise news analyst and newspaper executive and columnist of Daily Trust. We would like to thank you for joining us, and I will now move straight to you, Dr. Ikechukwu. What is your view on the prevailing security situation, including the home state of Mr. President, where after Mr. President being elected twice, we are seeing that his position as a general, as a former general of the Nigerian army, seems not to be having impact on the operations of the military, contrary to what Nigerians had thought as at 2015 when he came to power.
Yes, that is factually correct. Regarding his state, the traditional ruler was kidnapped, and I think kept for 2 months. Somebody related to his aide, working directly with him, was also kidnapped. Katsina is one of the most vandalized states today by bandits. It's also the state where the governor came out to announce cheerfully that he had signed an agreement with the bandits, and they were carrying AK-47, and nobody reprimanded him. What all these points actually is fundamentally a misunderstanding of the very concept of national security and then of the concept of defense. You have given orders for them to change strategy. What does that mean? On one occasion, he was very sad. On another occasion, it was inhuman. On yet another occasion, he didn't know what happened. On another occasion, he gave them marching orders to flush out the insurgents. When a month ago, five aid workers were killed, he sympathized with the families and told them that they are now working on a strategy to liaise with the local people so that kidnappings won't take place. Speech making. And the gentleman who spoke about the strategy, you could see it. He was not reporting the president. He was expressing a personal opinion. And it's being reported in the media as if the president, he said, I believe. And I'm convinced that he means well. That is what he thinks. That is what he believes. If that was a press briefing, it would have been a different matter. The president has directed on so and so, on so and so. So what has emerged in the last 5 years, and much more significantly in recent times, is that individuals around the government, the executive arm of government, respond to emergencies by expressing personal opinions, making soothing statements, hoping it will have impact. But there's actually no framework, no administrative framework.
Now that points to the strategy that the NSA Monguno was talking about. Do you think it is time for us to revisit the idea of introducing a National Guard system as introduced by former military head of state or military president, General Ibrahim Babangida, who had introduced it, but by then he had made politicians said it was aimed at them.
You see, that would just be what you might call traditional expansion of traditional military infrastructure. If the military and the defense security agencies are thinking of what to do, let them set up a drones and logistics battalion.
But we do have drones, in fact,
we don't.
Manufactured by even the Nigerian Air Force.
Now, that is self-deception. What's the efficiency? You see, you don't make investments. It's like you and I. Look, if we sit down to it, we can construct a blender in our homes. But will it blend like the blender from Yamaha? And the energy it will cost us will show that we are wasting executive time. We are not children. Now, Nigeria can buy the best drones, deploy them, have them monitor all the routes. We are where we are today because we keep pretending that control of the large expanse of land in the northeast and the greater part of the north is something our soldiers will do. They are not wizards. They are not magicians. Deploy the drones, dedicated drones, set up because they have a radius within which their fuel will expire. Get a crack team trained. Get some Israelis in here. 50.
We've always had them. I mean, before the exit of former President Goodluck Jonathan, he had brought some of those foreign forces to actually join us, private military contractors to fight alongside the Nigerian military and all of that. That's now brings me back to that same question that I asked you. Considering that we have used a huge chunk of our military for internal security operations, don't you think that that idea of reintroducing National Guard should be revisited?
3 questions. Who will train the National Guards and what magic will occur that you do not find in the training of the current military? That's number 1. What kind of equipment, what kind of political environment will they be functioning in? 3rd, the very fear that the National Guard could become an alternative command structure that will overrun the military is why 3 forces will work against it: the political, the military, and the security agencies.
Is that not the idea behind the mobile police force that we actually
But what has become of mobile police force? They are now deployed. If you want one, they will give you. And remember that the mobile police force was supposed to really not interact. You come out for a brief period, you go back because you're a strike force. It's all dissipated. The environment will make the worst of the best product you give it. So it's not about creating National Guards. After all, a new battalion was created in the north 2 years ago, I think. What is it? Where is it? What is it doing? We are replicating conceptual notions of military infrastructure, but we are not structuring military performance efficiency into any of them. Oh, can't you see we've created a new battalion? You say, that's a great strategy. Please, what's the strategy in that? Nothing.
Now, I would want you to quickly address the issue of budgetary provisions. Mr. President once asked for $1 billion and it was approved by the National Assembly. What do you think would have happened or may have happened to that money? Just briefly.
I'm in no position to say, but I will ask, what kind of commander-in-chief deploys resources for results, is seeing no results, he doesn't know where the resources are, and he keeps quiet and he says he's commander-in-chief? He's commanding nothing, with all due respect.
I'm afraid we'll have to go for a break right now. You're watching This Week on Arise News. Plenty more still to come. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week. I'm Somna Sambo. Across Africa, the presidents of Ivory Coast and Guinea are seeking a 3rd term separately, despite constitutional limits. The governing party in Guinea has asked President Alpha Condé to seek a controversial 3rd term in office. It follows months of protests against extending the 82-year-old's time in office as elections are due this year. Meanwhile, Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara announced that he too is seeking a 3rd term. Ouattara, in his independence anniversary broadcast, says the global COVID-19 pandemic and the socio-economic crisis it generated requires an experienced leader to steer the country to prosperity. For more on this, let's turn to Paul Ejime, the international affairs expert who will guide us through this. And I still have with me here in the studio Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, who is a public affairs and communications expert and also executive director of Development Specs Academy. And now to Paul. This is an interesting development considering that President Ouattara had said that he was no longer going to contest for a 3rd term, especially after the constitution was changed in 2016. Why do you think there's a change in decision by the Ivorian president?
Thank you for having me, and good evening, viewers. Well, if you've been following developments, what happened was that the ruling party's anointed candidate, Amadou Coulibaly, died. And so that created a void. And like you said, President Ouattara had said just in March here, after so much prevarication and tension that he wasn't going to run. So he was going to hand over to younger generation. But now he's, like you mentioned, he says the challenges COVID and 19 and others has now made it possible for him to change his mind. You wonder whether the younger generation will now have to wait in perpetuity. But it's all part of political calculation. He's always been in the air that he wanted to run, do a third term. And actually, when his argument and those of his followers is that the change in constitution in 2016 allows for two-term presidency, just like the constitution that he changed. So he is arguing that the 2 terms that he would have done by October, when a new election will be called, is under the old constitution. So this is now the third, they call it Third Republic, first term under the Third Republic. But the opposition is saying no, that it is a continuation, and they don't want to have anything to do with that. In fact, on Friday, and even this weekend, there have been, some manifestations in Boake and Abidjan by those who are saying that they don't want, dynasty or monarchy or whatever. So he should leave and give a chance to. He said it, and in fact, President Emmanuel Macron of France, the former colonial master, colonial administration in the country, had applauded him, saying that Côte d'Ivoire was setting an example after Ouattara had made that pronouncement. But for him now to come back, he has left a situation where the opposition is, he has had to deal with them. Guillaume Soho, who used to be his ally, is abroad, and he's been sentenced in absentia to 20 years or over embezzlement. Laurent Gbagbo, that he displaced, who went to The Hague and faced trial and has been acquitted, now under conditional release, is also in either in Belgium, asking for his passport to return to his country. He wants to contest. But what is happening is that from what the feelers from Abidjan is that his name is not on the list. So that might leave the ground for Konom Bade, who is also a former president. He is actually 86 and Gbagbo is 78. And so it's all, the place is made up of all gerontocratic fellows, those who should leave the scene for the younger generation. But Ouattara coming to the fray now will, as expected, raise the political temperature and then could only add to the tension and uncertainty and instability that West Africa has had to deal with. So that is what is happening. So ECOWAS, EU, UN, and France itself, which still has a major influence on these former colonies, they will all have to come down. Of course, the greater responsibility rests with the Ivorians to make sure that they don't go back to civil war or crisis from 2010, 2011 post-election crisis that led to the death of more than 3,000 people, displacement and all that. In fairness to Ouattara, he's brought some development, but that is not the issue. The essence of democracy is that it offers the electorate the opportunity to change leaders. And if some section of the country are saying, well, you've had your time, you should go, I think African leaders should learn and not sit tight, leave when the ovation is loudest, and give. It's not a matter of do or die or life and death. They should, it's an opportunity in a country of millions of people. You have had your time. okay, leave the place and allow others to also try their hands, so that perhaps you can stay by the side and then offer counsel, offer advice for the advancement of the country. But we see it's going to muddy up the water and create some political uncertainty and perhaps constitutional crisis once again in Cote d'Ivoire.
If I may cut into your conversation there, why is it that President Ouattara is trying to reenact the same scene that led to violence in 2010 when he displaced former President Laurent Gbagbo, and Laurent Gbagbo said he was not going to accept the outcome of the election? Is Ouattara not considering that by this action to seek a third term, Ivory Coast may boil, and the stability that has been achieved within these few years could actually be lost, especially considering how much ECOWAS and, in fact, Nigeria has played a critical role in ensuring that there's stability in Ivory Coast in the past few years?
Well, to quote the French, they say, you know, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Plus a change, plus la même chose. So, and politicians, they don't learn. I think that is the key thing. They never learn, whether be it in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, you see Guinea, everywhere. So you wonder, why do they, you know, try to create, manufacture, induce, instigate crisis? And when they do that, I don't know whether they derive any, you know, that could be sadism, if they derive any comfort from seeing people die, you know, ordinary people. They need to see death. They need to see some people killed and blood before they come to the negotiating table. I mean, why wait until, you know, that bloodbath, or wait until something gets escalated and then the whole region now begins to rally around? ECOWAS is not in a position to get troops to anywhere. The UN is stretched. And so it is also a way of greed and you know, selfishness of politicians.
Cut you short there, and we go straight to Dr. Ikechukwu. We have this tendency of African leaders staying for long. What do you think someone like Alpha Conde, who's old, will be able to actually say he wants to do this, seek third term quickly, and before we just go into Lebanon,
well,
actually give your
it's
expression
because of the
what you
level
think
of political maturity of the people. The institutions of state are weak. The major stakeholders do not have core positions, and they can't build a consensus against him. The military authorities around the place also. It's an environment where you have what you might call a hierarchical conception of leadership. Consultation is only gestural and not real. So it's the level of political maturity that is manifesting. Okay, just before we go quickly, what do you think is your opinion on the issues that happened with the Lebanese bomb blast in Beirut? If there's an explosion in your house and the police wants to come from outside to investigate and you say no, the natural suspicion is that you have a hand in the matter. So you think the president, by refusing international investigation, knows so much about himself? It's as simple and straightforward as that. He's deemed culpable, liable, and very likely the brain behind it. That's the suspicion he has allowed to arise because of his response. And one wonders, actually, before we go, if he doesn't want an international investigation, why is he receiving international aid? Chop, chop. Well, these are some of the things. Yes, core issues, because again, it betrays the level of a leader. You're leading a nation. If you're saying, I don't want your investigation, the way Murtala said, as head of state, he said, look, we've come of age around here. Yes, get lost. If he says you're not you're not going to call for foreign help, we're doing it here. Also, for your aid, we have enough food. We are a nation. He didn't go that way. Okay, we'll have to thank you for joining us, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu. You've been a wonderful guest, and it's been nice talking with you here. Well, that's it for this edition of This Week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye, and thank you for watching.